Well, good day. This is going to be print effects on the Word Home tab, and we're going to be looking at this font group, and we've seen this font group before. We've seen print effects like strike through, it's got a button of its own, or superscript, it's got a button of its own, or subscript, it's got a button of its own, but there are some print effects that you can't do with a simple, easy button. And the way to get to those print effects are through this Windows dialog box. You see, if you rest on it, it tells you that you could go to this font dialog box by using Control-D as a shortcut. Or you can just click this Windows dialog box, and I'll give it a click, and here are the font dialog box choices. These are all going to be my print effects. One of the print effects is to change the font, but geez, I could have used this button to change the font, couldn't I? Same with bold and italics. Bold and italics have buttons of their own, and point size, I could have changed the point size up here with point size. I could have changed the font color in here. But hey, I could have just changed the font color with the font color button. The underline style is the same way. There's lots of underline styles, but I could have chosen these underline styles with the underline button. So what do you need this dialog box for? Well, there's some things on the dialog box that you can do that you can't have an easy button to do. For instance, you can't do small caps without this dialog box, and you can't do outline as well. In order to get these characters, these print effects to work on the characters, you have to first highlight some characters. So let me do cancel, and I'm going to scroll up to some ones that aren't done yet. And here's some print effect choices. For instance, I might use the outline effect. I'll double click this word outline, and I'll go to the font dialog box, and I can choose the little box that says outline. Let's see what it does. It gives you a little preview of the word you have highlighted, and I'll say OK. And now it's outlined. It looks pretty good. I could do shadow the same way. Let me choose a word like subscript, and instead of making it subscript, I'm going to make it a shadow. So I'll do the drop down, and I'm going to choose shadow. It's one of the choices, and let's say OK and see if it looks any good. You say, well, I can't really see anything. It doesn't really look like a shadow. Sometimes you have to change the font a little bit bigger so you can see what you're doing with your print effects. And so now I can see, oh yes, it's got a little shadow on it. So some of these print effects aren't going to look very good unless the font is pretty big. Double strike through, that's something you can't do with a single button. So I'll use the drop down box, and it has a little button for double strike through, and you should just try these things out and see what they look like. One I wanted to show you is small caps. Small caps will only work if you first typed in lowercase letters. So this one says, for further details regarding blah blah blah, and maybe I'm going to take these first few letters. Now there's already a capital F, but all of the rest of the letters are lowercase letters, and I'm going to go see what that small caps does. So I'm going to choose small caps, and we'll take a look and see what you think it does. It changes the lowercase letters to uppercase letters, but the uppercase letters are not tall uppercase letters like this big F. It's still a capital F. Small caps, they're smaller letters, yet they're capital letters. So there's a lot of print effects you can do. Let's look at engrave real quick. We'll look at the drop down, and there's a box for engrave, and you'll have to play around with these, and you'll have to recognize them on the test to at least know what they are. You at least know where to go if you want to have that special print effect. And where were they again? They're on the font group, and there's a dialog box called the font dialog box. It has another tab called character spacing, and I'm going to do some character spacing. I'll show you what these things are all about. Let me cancel, and I have a little example set up waiting for you. It's down here at the bottom, and we'll take a look at those character effects. There's character spacing sort of things. And here's an example. Here's a word T-A-R, tar, and here's the exact same word typed again. Can you tell the difference between these two words? These two words do not look the same to me. They look completely different. You notice on this first word, the T sort of looks isolated from the A and the R. It sort of looks like there's a big separation space, whereas this one, the T and the A are very close together. That's because in word processing, each letter gets its own space, like this. And there's a little space between letters. Here I drew boxes around the letters to show you that there's a space between each letter. In normal everyday typing, there's going to be some sort of a space between each letter. But on this one, I didn't want a space because the T and the A are sort of a special letter combination. The A could fit nicely under that T, and I really don't need to have it in its own space. like it is up here. So I wanted those two letters to be closer together, and that's called kerning. Kerning. That's kind of a new word for us, and that's what I did with this one. When I did kerning, the T and the A are letters that fit nicely close together. What I did is I highlighted the letters, and I go to that same font dialog box onto the character spacing that says kerning. Kerning means place special letters close together because they fit nicely closer together. Then I did OK. Let me show you another example of kerning. A good example of kerning is a W and an A. I really don't need all that space between the W and the A. Another good letter combination is the A and the V. I really don't need all that space, so I type the exact same word twice. I'm going to highlight and I'm going to kern them together, and we'll see if it gets much of an effect. It says kerning above 65 points. I'm on 65 points, that's why it automatically came up to 65. And we'll watch over here and see if these letters get any closer together using this kerning checkbox. I'll say OK and let's watch. Yeah, they're a little closer together, and I suppose if I drew a perfect line between the W and the A, they might be on top of each other, or at least touching. There wouldn't be a space like there was before, spaces between letters. Certain letters fit nicely together, and that's a W and an A. They fit nicely together. But maybe kerning isn't enough. You know, kerning is really old-fashioned. They used to do that in the days of Benjamin Franklin. That's how old that thing is. So what you could do instead of using kerning is highlight it again, and this time we're going to compress. So I'll drop this thing down. Instead of kerning, which is kind of an old-fashioned thing, you could change the spacing. You can say, I want these letters to be condensed, that is, pushed together. It says how closely do you want to push together, and it recommends 1. Well, maybe I'll make it much bigger than that. Maybe I'll make it 8. Now, 8's quite a bit. 8's pretty big. But let's say OK and see what happens. And see how they're pushed together. And over here, the E and the V, boy, they're even touching each other. But it's much nicer over here for the W and the A. Maybe I'll just do the first 3 letters, and I'll condense just the first 3 letters, because these letters are letters that fit together pretty nicely. W's and A's, A's and V's. So I'll say just for those, maybe I'm going to make a special headline, and I'm going to I'm going to condense them together, maybe 6 points. And let's go see what 6 points does. 6 points, and OK. Hey, that looks much better. It looks much better than this thing up here does. This thing looks not too good. But this looks better. I kind of like it. Now on this one, the letters are exactly the same size. I mean, they're the same height. It's the same 65 points. But somehow I squished them together. And let me show you how I squished them together. I used that character spacing again, and I made the scale 33 instead of 100. Normally 100 is going to look like ordinary stuff. But you can take those letters and squish them together by changing the scale. And you can choose any number you want. Let's do 25%, see what that looks like. 25% and OK. And they're all squished up. So that's a character effect. This one is not squished up, it's spread out, and so instead of scaling it less than 100, I scaled it more than 100. I scaled it up to 200. Wonder what would happen if we made it 150, so you can just sort of see what's going to happen. 150 and OK, and so they're the same letters, just bigger, huh? Well, the last thing I want to talk to you about is using raising and lowering. Now, if you wanted to do x squared, you could just highlight the little 2 and do a superscript like this. And notice the 2 is smaller, though. It's not the same font as the x was before. The x is quite big, and the 2 is a lot smaller. You can take the 2 and just raise it up. Let's show you how to raise it up. You do that on character spacing, and it says position. Say I want it to be raised. Now, my point size is pretty big, 65. Maybe I want to raise it 20 points. That might be quite a bit, but let's just go see. We'll see the difference between raising, like this, or superscript, like this. So I'll say OK and see what happens. And there it's raised up. This is superscript over here, and this is just raised up. So in this video we looked at some print effects like strike through or double strike through or shadow or outline and emboss or small caps, and we also looked at some character spacing. Character spacing like scaled, where things can be the same height, the letters are the same height, but the letters are just pushed together. Or if it's greater than 100%, the letters are pushed apart. We looked at condensed, where all the letters are squished together. They keep the same height and the same shape. It's not like scaling up here. Or expanding, looks like you put extra space between each one of the letters. And then we learned about kerning, and we learned that kerning only works with certain letters that are set up by your computer already. For instance, the T and the A, they can be kerned together, but the A and the R, they are not kerned together. They're not a very good fit. And last we learned about raising letters like this and lowering letters like that, and that's often used in geometry stuff. Hey, and that's about all there is to it.